Hello, friends. I welcome you to episode 4 of Grief Support. Through this series, my intention is to support you, provide a sense of belonging, offer comfort and understanding about grief. This series also will work to validate feelings and provide you new insight as to how to move beyond grief and loss. Our today's title is Categories of Grief. When we experience grief, even though we do not make a conscious effort, but we may try to cope with grief or loss through our belief systems. These belief systems stems from our faith, the religion we follow, the culture we are part of, and the community we have grown up in. Our belief systems predominantly dominate our mindset and is one of the main areas when we go through setbacks, challenges, failures, or loss of any kind, where subconsciously we turn towards in order to understand the best ways to deal with it. If you have ever experienced or noticed that somebody who may have just experienced a personal loss, most of the very common statement that they may receive from their community or family or society. If, as an example, if I cite an Indian society here, a very quintessential typical statement would be that one needs to believe in destiny, believe in the will of God and submit to it. So what I'm trying to bring your attention to is anytime when we go through grief and loss, intense, deep grief, subconsciously most of us would go back to the system that we are brought up in, to the mindsets, and adapt only those coping mechanisms which are being taught to us. In some cases, these coping mechanisms work really well, but not necessarily all coping mechanisms or the perspectives that's being taught to us are always correct. And therefore, sometimes people going through grief and loss all find themselves going through a very confused state of mind, because what they personally feel with the complex emotions enveloping them and to what's being taught to them, they find a cognitive dissonance, meaning they find a lot of difference, and that trigger for most people to find the real meaning, purpose, or understanding of which direction are they moving and what is the right course of action. This grief support series that I have begun, my idea here, as I mentioned, is to make you all grief aware. It is not to negate any beliefs of any particular community or faith. Rather, it is to help people grieve the right way. You can completely follow what your faith, system, or your community believes in, along with this grief awareness, so that it helps you maneuver through this difficult way. The idea here is only to make you aware. So the more aware you become, the more easier it will be for you to go through the most difficult period of anyone's life. Also, friends, grief is just not confined to personal loss. Because anytime you may hear the term grief, we tend to think it's all about a demise of a loved one or a family member. But in reality, grief has major broad categories. Loss of health also is a part of grief and loss. Loss of a job is also cause grief. Natural disasters, whether we are directly impacted by it or somebody close to us, is also one of the reasons when people experience intense grief. Relationship loss is also one very key category within grief and loss. And of course, we have the personal loss where we cope with the demise of a loved one. Grief happens in many ways. It's not just about personal loss. Even minor setbacks, failures, adversities, or day-to-day stress that we face are reasons where we experience grief and loss. There are two distinct features of grief, and they are grief is universal and unique. Grief is universal, meaning we all go through it. It does not look at a particular community, a country, a gender. We all, as human beings, a common humanity, we all go through grief at some point or another in our life. Grief is unique. Just like our life, we all experience grief in our own unique ways, because none of us live life on somebody else's behalf. We all deal with our own life, with our own experiences, with our own likes and dislikes in our own unique ways. Similarly, the way we would deal with grief will be unique to each individual. So when I mention to you that a community or a faith or belief systems play a predominant role the way we grieve, at the same time, our own unique personality has a key role to play in it. You find yourself going through or having been through or presently experiencing any kind of grief. It could be a job loss grief, a loss of health, a chronic illness just diagnosed for any of your close associate or friends, any natural disaster, or a relationship loss. Understand, friends, that the way you are dealing with it is unique and it's your own. You have to follow a method, a process. Instead, stay open to it, accept it, and let the emotions have enough of you. Don't think that grief is a method or it's a step-by-step process that once you go through it, it will get over forever. Some losses in life are so intense that it might take an entire lifetime, and yet we still may not get over it. So for those and such intense and deep grief, the best method is to simply be with it. So if we have lost someone we consider very close to us and or have lost something that has left a deep void, remember that you will move ahead in life along with that grief and not without it. And it's absolutely okay to do so. There's no such principle or no such rule wherein you need to really come out of it and only then you can move ahead. You can still grow, still move ahead, still have your share of success that you carry in your heart for that special loss that you chose to not forget. I close this episode by letting you know that as a grief coach, I provide coaching. I help people move beyond grief and loss. And I also, in addition to that, have a grief support coaching group. So in case you feel or you find yourself stuck, you find it difficult to move beyond, you need help, I suggest you reach and get help. Thank you so much for being my listener. Thank you for your time. I leave the links along with the coordinates in the comment box where you could reach out to me with your answers, comments, feedback, or ideas. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.